So the first line of defense, if you want to make it safe, kids need to have a vocabulary. And it doesn't help to say, watch out, there are some very sick people out there. No. That's too scary. But if you say to a child, you have to dress tzniut, you have to sit tzniut, you have to get dressed properly on first thing in the morning. You tell a child what tzniut means, and then you can very easily say, and if somebody wants to touch you or wants to undress you, that's not tzniut. So if it does happen, God forbid, kid comes home and says, oh, that teacher's not tzniut.
מהתמכרות לגאולה. שמי דוקטור אפרת לירז, והפודקאסט שלי מדבר על התמכרות וגאולה. אם אתם מרגישים שאתם מכורים לאשמה, לרגשות של כעס, של זעם, של בושה, אם אתם מכורים לסמים, לאלכוהול, או סתם מכורים לקניות או למערכות יחסים מבאסות, אז הפודקאסט הזה הוא עבורכם. בעזרת השם נעשה ונצליח ונצא מההתמכרות שלכל אחד מאיתנו יש לעבר גאולה, חופש, חיבור לנפש האלוקית שנמצאת אצל כל אחד מאיתנו, ונדע איך לנצל את ההתמכרות ואת הכאב והסבל שיש בה לעבר גאולה, שזה חופש פנימי, אמיתי, חיבור אלוקי עם בורא עולם, עם החלק הגבוה שלנו, שבו נוכל להגיע לתשוקות האמיתיות שלנו ולמה שבאנו להב לעולם. בחסדי השם נעשה ונצליח. היום יש לנו אורח יקר, הרב מאניס פרידמן. אנחנו משדרים פה מניו יורק, מקראון הייטס. יש לנו נושא מאוד מאוד טעון וחשוב, פגיעות מיניות בישיבות, איך מתמודדים עם זה. הרב מאניס פרידמן הוא חסיד, רב סופר, פילוסוף חברתי ונואם ציבור. הוא גם דיקן המכון למדעי היהדות בית חנה. הוא היה משלוחי חב"ד הראשונים במיניסוטה. הוא מייסד ומנהל גם בהווה את מכון בית חנה העולמי. הוא כתב מספר ספרים, ואנחנו נדבר על נושא שהוא לא פשוט, אבל בחסדי השם הרב מאניס פרידמן ייתן לנו מהכוח והניסיון שלו איך להתמודד עם תופעה שלא תמיד מדברים עליה במגזר הדתי, גם הלאומי וגם החרדי. בחסדי השם נעשה ונצליח. I want today to talk about something that not everybody allowing to talk, and it's a problem that we know that we have, וזה פגיעות מיניות בעולם הישיבות, בעולם האולפנות, וזה דברים ש-sometimes הם מושתקים, או פגיעות בבית, בבתים של משפחות religious, שהורים מתמודדים עם ילד שפגע בילד, ואיך מתמודדים עם התופעה הזו, ובכלל איך זה קורה שכביכול העולם הדתי הוא עולם שצריך להגן בעידן התמימות, ודווקא בעידן התמימות הזה כל כך הרבה אנשים מתמודדים with addiction to sex, with pornography, דווקא בעולם הישיבות.
גם בעולם הישיבות.
גם, נכון.
Which is surprising, yeah? The biggest problem is the ignorance. Nobody talks about it. Nobody talks about intimacy. Nobody talks about sexuality. Nobody talks about the most important subject in the world. Not allowed to talk about it. Not even allowed to know about it in some yeshiva, in some communities. It's a chumra shemevi l'dei kula. You think you're being more religious and you're making a churban. If you don't talk about it, then don't be surprised when there are problems. Because how should they know? The ignorance is terrible. And maybe that's what it means, lo am haaretz chasid. Am ha'aretz doesn't necessarily mean that you don't learn Gemara. Am ha'aretz means you don't know anything about life. This is not healthy. It's not good. I have a feeling, I don't know for sure, but in the olden days, in the really, really religious communities 200 years ago, everything was open. They spoke clearly, they spoke openly. Children knew what sexuality was. We were not afraid of the subject. Being afraid of a subject is a weakness. It's not a chachma. And it's not a hidur mitzvah. It's ridiculous. Why it became that we're not allowed to talk, you're not allowed to... I don't know. I don't know. And it's not a good thing. There's a famous story in the Gemara that a student went to his Rebbe's house and was hiding under the bed. And they caught him. They said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Torah hi v'lilmod ani tzarich." I have to know, how do you behave in a bedroom? And his answer was accepted.
Wow.
So most people say, "Oh, what a terrible story, hiding under the bed. Oh, it's terrible, disgusting." Now, the really big question is, why was he hiding? Why didn't he knock on the door and say, "Tayrehi v'lilmad ani tzarich"?
אתה אומר משהו מאוד מאוד חזק, בגלל שהרבה פעמים שאנחנו הולכים לקיצוניות בפסיכולוגיה, זה בא לנו בבומרנג. עכשיו, אנחנו יודעים, אמנם פרויד is not religious, אבל בפרויד דיבר על עיקרון העונג. אוקיי, אז אנחנו לא רק עיקרון העונג, כי יש לנו גם נשמה אלוקית, אבל עיקרון העונג הוא עיקרון מאוד מאוד חזק. אז אם אתה לוקח קפיץ, and you push it, and you push it, and you push it, בסוף הוא מתפוצץ.
Not telling, if a young boy is molested and he doesn't tell anybody, the damage is caused by the secret more than by the event. Especially if it's very young. A 6-year-old boy has to keep a secret from his mother. That's damaging. What happened? If he knew what was going on and could talk about it, there would be no damage.
לא רק זה. When a child is molested as a young kid, it's called in psychology בלבול שפות. He mixed the language between love and lust. And then, הרבה פעמים those kids afterwards go to pornography, במקרה הטוב, ובמקרה הרע הם גם יכולים לפגוע בלי להבין שהם עושים כפיית החזרה of their hurt, הם פשוט לא יכולים להחזיק את הכאב, והם הופכים להיות פוגעים, כדי לזרוק את הכאב של הקורבן, אז הם הופכים להיות התוקפן. ואז זה שרשרת בישיבות של אנשים שנפגעו.
So, when this happens to a child, the child doesn't know what to say. Many cases, of course, they're too afraid to say anything. But even when they're not afraid, they don't know what to say. They don't know what happened. That's the bilbul. They don't know what happened. Something is not right. They don't know what's not right. So they can't talk. If they had a language, if they had words, a vocabulary, to be able to say what happened, they would come home and say, that teacher is strange. Right. The second thing is the reaction of the parents when they do find out, or the reaction of the adults. So much depends on their reaction, because the child doesn't know what happened to him. He doesn't know. He comes home and he says, The teacher was touching me, and the parent's reaction will tell him whether something terrible happened, not so terrible. It all depends on the reaction. So if the parents go crazy and panic, the kid is traumatized. If the parents say, really, that teacher? He shouldn't even be a teacher. Oh, okay. Much less trauma. So you got to be careful on how we deal with the issue when you're talking to the victim, to the person who's committing. You can say whatever you want. You can say you're a murderer, you're but to the child you have to be careful. The trauma comes from the reaction. So if he doesn't tell, then the silence and the secret becomes the trauma. If he does tell, then the reaction. I'm going to kill him. I'm going to
kill you.
Yeah. It's almost the same, right? When a child is not believed. So you have so many layers here. You can't generalize. Every child who's molested suffers from the same problem. Either he can't talk about it, which is one problem. He told his parents and they don't believe him, which is a completely different trauma. He's horrified by what happens, but he feels very guilty because he enjoyed it. Another trauma. So what are you talking about? You have to be a little more specific. But all of it can be solved with a little knowledge, a little information. If a child who is 4 years old can come home from kindergarten and say, my teacher is not tzniut, he looked at me, he touched me, no trauma. Because you defined it, you gave it a name. Child doesn't have a name for it. What can he say? That my teacher is perverted? What was he going to say? He doesn't know the word perverted. And if the teacher is perverted, then what am I? It's too scary. But if a child knows certain things are not tzniut, so he comes home, he says, hey, the teacher is not tzniut. He doesn't feel traumatized. And it doesn't scare the parents so bad either. One final thing. If we knew, let's say we're talking now about grown-ups who are still traumatized by what happened when they were 6 or 7. And what is the damage? They can't function. They're married and they should be intimate and they should have healthy sex, and they can't. In other words, they think of what happened to them as children. They think that that is sexuality. The problem of the adult who is traumatized is because they think that what happened to them was a sexual experience. Now, they're going to have sex with their husband, with their wife. Not good memories. So to them, sex has become painful, scary, ugly. If they knew that what they're doing with their spouse, what they're doing with their wife, has nothing in common with what happened in the playground it's a completely different experience. Which comes to the other general problem. In the frum community, a child grows up knowing that sex is a very scary, ugly, sinful, disgusting thing. Right? That's what you're told. If you even think about it, you're an animal. you're sinful, Now all of a sudden he turns 18 and he's told to get married and do all these disgusting, horrible, sinful things with his wife. How do you make sense of that? There are actually people who say that's what marriage is for. Marriage is so that you're allowed to do those horrible, disgusting things. But now it's a mitzvah. This doesn't make any sense. What is the answer? The answer is the things you were told were disgusting will always be disgusting.
יש בזה עוד בלבול. אני אביא עוד נקודה שלפעמים הרבה נשים שעוברות הדרכות קלה ואומרים לאישה עושה רצון בעלה ופתאום היא מתחתנת עם מישהו שהוא פרוורטי והיא צדיקה, חסידית, עושה את רצון בעלה ואחר כך היא מוצאת עצמה בגיל 35 או 40 רוצה למות ואז פתאום היא מבינה רצון בעלה זה בכלל לא מה שהקדוש ברוך הוא רוצה. זה עוד נושא שהוא לא פשוט.
Yeah. That's also the result of ignorance. So what happens? All the information, and you can tell immediately, speaking to a yeshiva bacher who never looked outside of, but when it comes to this topic, they all look because they need information and they can't talk to anybody in the yeshiva. So they're curious. They need to know what's going on with their yetzer hara, with their taiva, with their whatever. So they go online to find out what it is. And of course, what are they going to hear? Pornography. Even the good advice that is given, good. The secular advice is all pornography. There's no kedusha. So they think that pornography is what intimacy is all about. And it's shocking. It's shocking. I was speaking to a group of very religious people, and I mentioned something that, of course, intimacy between husband and wife, of course, it's in the dark. They said, why? I said, what? You don't know that? How is that possible? Because the only information they read or saw or heard is pornography.
Sex Anonymous, they talk about the difference between intimacy and sex.
Uh-huh.
And when people don't get the right information, they can mix sex with intimacy. And בעידן התמימות, שאתם מביאים את זה כל כך יפה בספר, you teaching how to combine it, what is real intimacy.
So what is the difference between intimacy and sex?
עולם ומלואו.
No, in the secular world.
In the secular world? אני חושבת שאתה מביא את המיניות מבחינה תפיסתית, מה שאתה רואה בפורנוגרפי, זה מעוות לך את המציאות, כי אתה רק לוקח, אתה לא מתחבר לנשמה של הבן אדם, זה קשר אחר לגמרי.
Or in different words, there are two people, a husband and a wife, a man and a woman, and then there is something that they do called sex. That's pornography. If sex is something you do, then all the problems are going to exist. You're taking, you're not giving, you're taking more, you're giving more. I gave more, you gave less. It'll never be good. If you want to ruin somebody's marriage, it is so easy. Stop any man in the street, anybody. Say, I'm just wondering, in with your wife, the sex is good. That's it, you killed him. Is it? I think so. Maybe not. I don't know. How am I supposed to know? It's a terrible thing because you made sex a thing. It's a thing. Is that thing good or is it not good? How am I supposed to know? Intimacy means there's no thing. There's us. And we are completely close. We're completely one. We have no distance between us. It's called yichud. V'hayu lebasar echad. How is a basar echad? You have your sex, I have my sex. I don't know if it's good. I don't know if it's good for you. I don't know what you thought. I don't know what you felt. I know what I felt. If it's just sex, then it keeps two people apart. It doesn't bring them together. It's ahava hatluya b'davar. If the sex becomes the thing, so there are now three realities, he, she, and it, there's going to be trouble.
So how do you call the it?
There's no it.
There is no it? But if the couple is not attracted, so...
What do you mean they're not attracted? They married each other. They are attracted. But are they attracted to each other or are they attracted to something that they can do together? If it's a thing, it's not intimate. It's pornography. Pornography makes sex into a thing. Makes the person into a thing. So, in a world that is real Kedusha, what is the pleasure? Because you have to have pleasure in life. What is the pleasure in the tzad HaKedusha that is equal or the alternative to the pleasure in the tzad HaTuma? You can't just say don't. Not this way, this way. What is this way? Is the pleasure of intimacy equal to the pleasure of sex? Most people will say no. That's why people get bored in their marriage and they have to go look for more interesting things. Is there pleasure in being shomer mitzvot? No, that's just something you have to do. Pleasure is only when you're sinning. That's another serious problem in the yeshiva. What is the pleasure in the yeshiva? The ga'ava. That's the only pleasure. I'm smarter, I know better, I'm a bigger Talmud Chacham than you. That's it. One woman, very Haredi, said when she started learning Tanya, it was like oxygen. So to put it in very, very, or maybe too simple, being molested is being a victim of Avera. If somebody tricked you into eating chazir, would you be traumatized? Or just angry?
Depends. Angry.
Mm-hmm. Why don't we treat this like an avera instead of a psychological episode?
It is a psychological episode.
But if you're frum, shouldn't the question of avera, mitzvah, Ratzon Hashem, shouldn't that be a bigger question than psychological episodes? Why is psychology, the psychological health of a person, more important than the mitzvah? So again, exactly what the trauma is makes a huge difference. And that's why you can't have a room full of children who were molested being treated all the same way.
Absolutely.
Because there's so many different... So the first line of defense, if you want to make it safe, kids need to have a vocabulary. And it doesn't help to say, watch out, there are some very sick people out there. That's too scary. But if you say to a child, you have to dress tzniut, you have to sit tzniut, you have to get dressed properly on first thing in the morning. You tell a child what tzniut means, and then you can very easily say, and if somebody wants to touch you or wants to undress you, that's not tzniut. So if it does happen, God forbid, kid comes home and says, oh, that teacher is not tzniut. That older boy is not tzniut.
So you're talking about one thing is taking out the ashma and busha and giving more educational teaching.
A child wants to know, did I do something wrong? He doesn't know. Did the teacher do something wrong? Is the teacher a bad person? How is he supposed to know? Something was funny because the teacher took him aside or took him in a room. So something is going on over here. What is it? Teacher loves me more than all the other kids? So without being able to say what was wrong. So if a child would ask, somebody touched me, was that wrong? What would you say? Oh yes, it's very damaging to your psychology. No, that's not what's wrong. That's the symptom, or that's the effect. But what was wrong? So the government gave out a book, American government, many years ago, gave out a book about children's rights. You have the right to not be molested, which is so ridiculous. Your rights were violated? What was violated? What? The only answer is tzniut. It's not tzniut. What happens if you do something not tzniut and get threatened that if you tell anybody I'll kill you? Okay, that's trauma. But give it a name. What did the person do? He did something not tzniut. There's another detail in this whole thing. In the Haredi world, there is this really silly habit, maybe minhag. You tell a child there are kosher candies and there are non-kosher candies. Don't eat non-kosher candies. They're terrible. They're horrible. They're. Now what happens if the child by accident eats a non-kosher candy and it's not horrible? It tastes better than the kosher candy. Now the kid is completely confused. You told me it's horrible. It's not horrible. If we were teaching correctly, you would say to a child, the non-kosher candies that are so delicious, you're not allowed to eat them. Don't say they're horrible. They're not horrible. They're candy. Candy can't be horrible. Call it what it is. Don't say if you eat non-kosher candies, you're disgusting. It's not disgusting. It's a candy. Don't lie. Tell the truth. delicious candies can be a sin. That is such an important hint at sexual relations. Don't say a boy who thinks of a girl is disgusting. He's not disgusting. Give it a name, call it what it is.
So, בעצם אני אחבר את זה לבעיית אחד זה בעיה של ההסתרה, שאני רוצה שנדבר על זה בזמן שנשאר לנו, כדי שיהיה קול של שפיות. מספרים לא נתפסים. And thank God they're going.
Right.
Thank God they want to change.
Right. In the secular world, they don't need to change. So let's get down to the real facts of why is watching pornography so destructive? If you're secular, what's wrong? What does it damage? What is it? If you're frum, if you're religious, then your guilt, because you know it's wrong, you know you're not allowed, so your guilt bothers you. But if you're not religious, what's wrong? I like people say, why shouldn't a husband and wife sit and watch pornography together? It'll make their relationship more exciting. But it doesn't. The damage is, especially for a man, and it's mostly men who have the problem, when a man wants pleasure from sex, it goes against the nature of the mashpia. A man's sexuality comes from what he does, not what is done to him. If he is asking to receive pleasure, he becomes the mekabel. He's not a mashpia. Then when he needs to be a mashpia, he can't function. So watching pornography literally emasculates. You stop being a man. Not because of guilt, but because you just switched roles from your natural role to a passive feminine role. And your wife doesn't want to be married to a feminine. So that's the real damage. So, again, most of the men who come for therapy, because they know there's something wrong, don't know what's wrong. They're ashamed, they're guilty, they feel like they're addicted, it's out of control. That's not what's wrong. What's wrong is you have stopped being a mashpia. You want to receive pleasure, not give pleasure. And your real pleasure comes from giving, not from receiving. So you've killed yourself. You've destroyed your sexual function. If a man would realize this, say, whoa, wait a minute. The problem is I've stopped being a... Well, okay, let me go back. No more taking. From now on, I'm a gever, or giver. I'm not a receiver. I'm the giver. And that will give my wife the pleasure. It will make me normal. Everything will be good. I think that's why the book, בחזרה לתמימות, although we were really worried about it, how is the religious community going to handle a book on intimacy? So people gave me all sorts of advice. Don't use the word sex. Don't. So you can't talk about sex and not use the word sex. Like, You can't do that. Oh, it's not allowed. What do you mean it's not allowed? If you read the Gemara, if you read the Shulchan Aruch, you read about the laws of Isurei Bia. That's worse than sex. When it comes to halacha, you have to use the right words. Because if not, there's misunderstanding, you mess everything up. So of course you don't use the word in conversation. But if you're teaching, you have to teach clearly. So let's go back to the original question. Number one, why does it happen? And number two, what's the solution? It happens because of ignorance. The average Haredi couple are practicing what they see on the internet because nobody in yeshiva told them anything. Or all they were told is that it's not nice and that we don't talk about it. That's how not nice it is. One more thing, if we're talking to a religious audience, a man is not allowed to be with his wife when she's nida. Why? Because she is tameh. There's tumah, and you don't want to be tameh. In other words, the man is protecting himself from the tumah of a woman. How does that make women sound? How do you live a life with a woman and respect her when every month she's tumah? Something is very dangerous there. So listen to the truth of the matter. Interesting halacha. In the Bet HaMikdash, right? Only a Kohen is allowed to go into the Bet HaMikdash. But he's not allowed to go into the Bet HaMikdash when he is tameh. He has to go to the mikveh, he has to wait. Sometimes he has to bring a karban. What if there is something in the Bet HaMikdash that is tameh? Like a dead animal. It's a really serious problem. How do you get it out? The Kohen is not allowed to become tameh. A non-Kohen is not allowed to go into the Bet HaMikdash. How do you get it out? It's a problem, right? Why is the Kohen not allowed to go in and take out the tumah? Oh, because he'll become tameh. No. The reason he's not allowed to go into the Bet HaMikdash to take out the tumah is because he will become tameh, and when he is tameh, he's not allowed to be in the Bet HaMikdash. It's a completely different... Not that the Kohen is protecting his own tahara. He's protecting the Bet HaMikdash from his tumah. Because when he becomes tameh, he's not allowed to be in a Bet HaMikdash. So who are we concerned about, him or the Bet HaMikdash?
Bet HaMikdash.
A man is not allowed to be with his wife when she is tameh. Why?
To protect the house.
Because if he becomes tameh, he's not allowed to be with her. Her tumah she can handle. His tumah she doesn't need. So what are you protecting, him or her? Even when she's tameh, you protect her from your tumah. That's a completely different respect. A natural tumah is natural. You're bringing tumah? Oh, no. That's out of respect for the woman, not because she is tameh. It's a whole different story. Anyway, so here's the if we don't teach, people will look online. If they look online, they're going to be living pornography. Living pornography means the man will become
a woman.
Emasculated. Then the wife will say, what's wrong with you? More emasculated. I'm not happy with this relationship. More emasculated. So what does he do? Watches more pornography. Yeah. So I want to tell you a little dramatic. Sometimes you have to dramatize a little bit. A man asked me, I came into the house and I saw my son sitting on the computer watching pornography. What am I supposed to do? He was very Haredi. I said, what did you do? He says, don't ask. You made it 10 times worse. What you should have done? You should have taken a look at the screen. And you should have said, what are you looking at? Oh, people without clothes? People with no pants? And walk away. Does that make sense? The kid is watching. He doesn't know what he's looking at. He doesn't know what's happening. He has no idea. It's wrong, it's terrible, it's a sin, it's a crime, he's going to go blind. He doesn't know what is going on here. So you walk up and you say, you know what you're doing? You're looking at pictures of people without their pants. No? Isn't that what he's doing? 2 days later, you sit down and you say, no, so? You saw already. Okay, so? Enough? You have to play it down, not up. And the same is true with every Avera. The more you horrify the child, the worse it'll get. This is so terrible. You're gonna suffer. What are you doing? It's an Avera. Say to God, I'm sorry, and live.
לגבי ההסתרות בהנהגות, על ההסתרה שיש בבתי ישיבות, בהסתרה של פגיעות מיניות, הוקעה של אנשים שפגעו. מה הגישה שלך?
Well, look, it's a very, very different story when you're talking to the victim or you're talking to the abuser.
Abuser.
When you're talking to the abuser, you have to look at the serious, damaging, negative side. When you're talking to the victim, you don't want to emphasize how terrible it is.
ברור.
So what do you say to the victim? I mean to the abuser.
What do you say to the abuser is one thing. What do you say to the people שזה מגיע אליהם, שמשתיקים את זה?
It's the same, I think it's the same problem. They don't know how to talk about it. They don't know how to deal with it. If it happened to them, they wouldn't know what to say. If it happened to somebody else, they don't know what to say. I asked a principal in a yeshiva, this boy was molested. Can you talk to him? He said, what should I say? What should I say? Talk to him about sex? I can't. I don't know how. So they try to make believe it didn't happen. Or they call in a psychologist who is secular. That's another problem. So if we are not the teachers of sexuality, then who will be?
The internet. אז זה בעצם המסע של הספר בעידן התמימות. מקסים.
I really think that in the olden days people were much more responsible about it. They spoke about it, it was natural. A Melamed asked the Rebbe that there are certain parts of the Chumash, and especially Rashi, that are adult material. So he's asking the Rebbe, should I skip those Rashis? Or he said, I do skip the Rashi, I'm saying. The Rebbe said, that's bad. If you skip a Rashi, the children all want to know that Rashi. What happened over there? Why did you skip it? So you're creating an unhealthy. It's kedusha, it's Torah. You teach it, like you teach everything else. But only if you can teach it with the same voice that you teach everything else. If you get so uncomfortable and your voice changes, then skip it.
מדהים.
And why does your voice change? Because you can't handle it.
נכון.
The problem is not the children. The problem is you. You don't know how to speak about sex from a holy Torah perspective. You think you're talking about something dirty and nasty and secret? Then don't teach it. But it's not the Rashi that is the problem. And it's not the child, it's you. If it's Torah, you should be able to teach it like you teach everything else. You're not allowed to eat non-kosher candy. You're not allowed to carry on Shabbat without an eruv, and you're not allowed to touch people. All of them are enjoyable. There was one girl who told me it was very, very impressive. Girls are so much more mature. A girl said I was molested. And she went to therapy, she talked to therapists. She says, there's one thing I didn't tell the therapist. I liked it. I didn't want it, but I liked it. It felt good.
אבל זה הרבה פגיעות מיניות. זה האשמה של הקורבן.
Why didn't she tell the therapist?
לא, מדברים על זה דווקא הרבה. זה תופעה מאוד ידועה.
She didn't.
She was ashamed. אשמה.
She talked about it to the therapist, but she didn't say I enjoyed it.
אשמה.
Right. And ashma, you don't talk to a doctor, you talk to a rabbi. That was so smart of her. What are you going to tell a secular, I did Avera? What's the secular going to tell you? No, it's not an Avera. Thank you. It was very smart. She also said it really brilliantly. She said, I didn't want it, but my body betrayed me. It's also so smart. The fact that you enjoyed it doesn't mean you did want it.
Of course, it happens a lot of times with children that were molested by women. And they say they don't understand it's a molestation because the body was function. But it's אותו דבר.
Yeah. So when she said that, she said, but I enjoyed it. I said, good. That means you're healthy. So there's so many layers. And a subject this complicated, we have no language, we have no words, we have no teachings. There's no chachma in Torah about this subject. How can that be? How could that be?
מדהים.
milim and wisdom.
זה שליחות.
So let's end with one final thought. I was talking to a group of girls, and they said, the Torah doesn't say anything about the subject. So the Torah is not really important. Because when it comes to important subjects, nothing. So I said, did you ever read what the Rebbe says about Hanukkah? What was Hanukkah? What happened Hanukkah? The Yevanim came into the Bet HaMikdash, Kodesh HaKadashim, and they made it Tameh. The people wanted to light the menorah after, and all the oil was Tameh. They were ready to use the oil, but the Maccabee said, no, we have to have Shemen Tahar. They went, they looked, and they found. But there was only enough for one day. It lasted 8 days. That's Hanukkah. Do you hear what the Torah is saying? That if somebody comes into your Kodesh HaKadashim and makes you a Tameh, you think you're going to have to live the rest of your life with Shemen Tameh? No. You look a little deeper. Because a little deeper, the Shemen that is there cannot become Tameh. It has the seal of the Kohen Gadol. If you use that oil, it'll last as long as you need. 8 days, 8 years, 8,000 years, doesn't matter. In other words, the Tumah is only on the outside. But the whole story of Hanukkah is we were molested. In Mitzrayim, we didn't have any Kedusha. Purim, they just wanted to kill us, not molest us. Hanukkah means, I don't want to kill you. I just want to bring you Tameh, Tumah, into your holiest place. So Torah doesn't say anything about being molested. Yeah. Molestation only goes to the external. Internally, you're never damaged.
אני חושבת שעם זה, אני יכולה להגיד לנשים שאצלי נמצאות בקליניקה ולגברים, I'm saying, to hear you saying that to people that I treat in my clinic is גאולה לנפש. שאף אחד לא יכול לפגוע בהם. דרך אגב, ומי שמתעסק בטראומה ומביא את הטניה, ואתה אומר, הנפש האלוקית שלך לא נפגעה בטראומה. תשחרר את זה. אי אפשר להבין למה זה קרה, זה מרפא. זה מרפא. זה מילים של גאולה אתה מביא. תודה רבה, כבוד הרב, על הזמן שלך.
We should all have very good news.
אמן. ותמיד הפודקאסטים שלך מעוררים השראה, ותודה רבה על ההסכמה לטפל ולגעת בנושא כל כך עדין, שלא כל כך הרבה אנשים מוכנים לדבר עליו, ובעזרת השם שנביא גאולה לאנשים ששומעים אותו, גם לנפגעים וגם לפוגעים, כי גם הם צריכים גאולה.
We have to have the teachers, the rabbis, the mashpiyim, they all have to speak about the subject from Torah. I heard there was an event, they had 6 speakers, all in Yiddish. I could tell you which books they were quoting. Nothing was from the Torah. It's not good.
תודה רבה. מסירות תודה.
הצלחה.
אמן.